So I'm going to talk about data, analytics, reporting, and measurement strategy, which is, I know, kind of a mouthful. And I'm also going to talk about the term good data, right? Not big data, because I don't think anyone really knows what big data is. Does anyone know where the term came from? Big data?
Ladies and gentlemen, it is 9:40.
It's an early pop quiz, I know, but it came from CERN. There's like a large hadron collider there that like breaks atoms apart. That apparently is what big data is. Now, somehow that made its way into marketing, and again, people use it very willy-nilly. Now, and I talked about this with Sam the other day. We talked about what data is, right? So our opinion is there's either data or it's not data, right? So you can either use it or you can't. So most of the time we focus on making sure that we really create good data that allows us to then to ultimately do our job. And really what we in D&I obsess about is really understanding what the DNA of performance looks like and how we really apply that to what you do as a business, right? So there's a big focus on really understanding the nitty-gritty of how different channels work, what the things that ultimately ladder up to driving meaningful business performance for you as clients. And, you know, 2 Muppets in a presentation, right? That's got to win some sort of prize, I'm hoping. Does anybody remember his name? Beaker, right? And the other guy was Professor Honeydew, I think. So the first big challenge that we have to get to before we can do anything really meaningful from an analytical standpoint is, of course, come on, pop quiz. It's data, 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 and data. Lots of data. Now, what are the challenges with data today? A, there's so much of it. It doesn't come in a standardized format. It's really different from channel to channel, right? So as we think about synthesizing, even search and display, that means actually you have to think about campaign naming structures across different touch points. Now, having also done a lot of stuff in traditional, it's even more of a pain, right? Because all the data comes at different speeds as well, right? So one of the guys I used to work with at Round Dutch Isobar, he used to talk about grains, different grains of data, and really how you synthesize and manage that. It's actually quite important because it really impacts what you want to do from an analytical standpoint and how you use it, in my belief, in market. So I'm a big in-market guy. I believe as we activate campaigns, we should have a very firm grip of how is something performing, how should it be performing, and if not, what the hell do we do, right? And do that in a way that makes it easy to do. So we heard the lady from eMarketer yesterday talk about real time or right time or real time or just now marketing, whatever we want to define it as. And she talked about the process of like collecting data, analyzing data, and then doing something with it, right? And as she pointed out, the challenge with that is that it takes too bloody long, right? We don't have enough time to then do anything meaningful with it because in all things in marketing, there is a natural decay function, right? Which works against you, unfortunately. So if you wait too long, any changes that you make have no impact. I spent years fighting with clients about this because it's actually really important. Like, if you don't set yourself up to make right time decision making, you're never going to get any value from it. You might as well not bother. You might as well just analyze it all at the end and then figure out what you do moving forward. But we don't believe in that here. So how do we create good data? How do we empower good data? I thought that was a good word. The first thing you have to do is you have to make sure that your different parts of the business really work together, right? So one of the first things I did when I came in is I said, look, what we do from an operational and technology standpoint has to be in lockstep with what we want to do from a D&I standpoint. Because typically, we are the consumers of that information. So if I want to create analytical solutions or reporting solutions or that kind of stuff, they need to understand what they have to build. They need to understand how the data needs to go in. And all of those things need to link together. And then ultimately, from a client perspective, how do we make sure that the data that we get in from your perspective fits within this system and ultimately that we're linking everything up in a way that allows us to truly understand how stuff is performing. So the next thing I looked at was what D&I is. And one of the things I found was that to most people, it's kind of a broad, generic thing, right? Some people do some reporting, they maybe do some look-back analysis. It was a bit sort of random and generic. So I introduced 4 pillars of what D&I should be, right? The first one, which is probably the simplest one, but actually I think the most important one, is a measurement strategy, right? And it's linked to, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? What is the analysis that we can use to really make sure that we understand the right KPIs, that we have smart KPIs, that we think about testing, that we can brief our guys in operations and say, hey, we've got 4 tests going into display. This is how we want to be able to split it out, and this is how we want to be able to monitor it, right? So there's that. Then there's reporting and data visualization, which I've learned to love. Honestly, it was something that I didn't love early on in my career, but I've learned to love it. And I'll focus on that last. The next thing is analytics. Now, this is probably the biggest bucket because, frankly, there's like umpteen different things that you can do, right? So attribution modeling, right? Offline, online driver analysis, performance algorithms, web analytics, forecasting. These are all really different skill sets, right? So part of what we wanted to recognize is that, you know, working with our clients, you don't necessarily need all of these things at once. You don't need 4 different people working in your account, but you need different bits of expertise, and I mean real expertise at different times, right? This is how we maximize the value that we get for you, right? Versus, you know, having like 18 FTEs doing this sort of stuff. So again, that's sort of changing the model a bit. And then finally is about how we do conversion rate optimization. So Jack Swain's team and I, we're going to be working on how we really bring this to life as well. So for me, it's just, this is a closed loop, right? So we go, how do we drive people to the website? How do we convert them more efficiently, right? So going back to this, now, there was a guy that got me into doing analytics. So historically, I was a planner when I started my career. I've always worked in data in some way, form or another. I actually worked in Partworks publishing when I was younger, so that was a bit similar to the guy that talked about the CDs. We didn't sell CDs, but we sold equally bad stuff. The challenge with most reporting that I see day in, day out is it doesn't give you context, right? It gives you numbers. So what do I always hear, and I'm sure you guys probably feel the same way, well, what does this mean? How do I know what to do with it, right? So is this good? Or is it bad, right? So that's why fusing all of these things together is really what allows us to build that context. So as we think about reporting, reporting becomes more than just reporting. Reporting becomes the manifestation of all the work that we've done up front. So we can truly, right, monitor and track what's going on in market, how that relates to what you're trying to achieve, and ultimately making sure that we enable our activation teams to truly optimize whilst we're in market and really find those nuggets of performance. Now, I love giving examples in real life, like demos of things, because I think it's important to bring concepts to life, because otherwise you're sitting there going, oh my God, he's talking a lot about data. And that's not always very exciting. I happen to think it's incredibly exciting because the biggest part of my job is to add context to data through everything that I've talked about in the pillars, right? And that manifests itself through many things. Now, I mentioned performance algorithms before. I think it's a really cool term, but simply what it means is it allows me to do all the upfront homework, as I like to call it. I do homework up front to make sure that we're going to market. I really understand how things should be performing. So that's looking at historical norms at a very granular level. It's incorporating things like forecasting, projections, any kind of an analytical work that allows me to understand how different things work together, and I'll go into more detail on that. So this is one of the first products that we're going to be rolling out. It's called Sonar, right? We also had a solution called Radar in my old job, so there was a nautical themes. We were also working on a product called Compass, right? And there was a product called Map before that as well, believe it or not. So there's definitely a theme of finding your way around. So Sonar has been developed to really focus on digital optimization. So that can be search, display, social, you name it. It's kind of in there. And it's fully customized to you as a business, right? As a client, your norms, the way that your business performs, all of that kind of stuff is unique to you, right? But it's a common platform where you add that uniqueness through that, because your own performance algorithm is yours. It's not anyone else's. There's no point in me taking a Sears algorithm and applying it to Radio Shack. It's not gonna work. So what I wanted to do was just to kind of bring it to life and actually give you sort of a live demo of what this thing does and looks like. So on the right-hand side, so this is for display, sorry. On the right-hand side, you see a number of kind of bubbles, right? These are all the metrics that go into display currently. So for this particular client, there's 7. Now, one of the things that we did which I thought was kind of cool, was we merged ComScore VCE. Does anyone know what that is? Validated Campaign Essentials. It's very exciting. It's a good brand name, right? What that allows you to understand is viewability, the percentage target audience penetration, so like, am I hitting my right audience, as well as frequency on a daily basis, right? These are my efficiency metrics, right? So as I think about being a media planner and buyer, this is about making sure that I have my ad viewable, right? Quite a big thing. So I used to work for a big CPG company, and their viewability rate was something like 42%, which I thought was not very good. But apparently the industry average is 46. That's kind of terrible. So I'll clarify what viewable impression means. So it's 50% present for a second, right? So one of the reasons why your inventory might not be performing is because no one is seeing it. Yeah. So, right, and then you have your, what I call my effectiveness norms, which is things like click-through rate and like, interaction rates or video view-through rates or whatever it might be. And so the next thing that we did is we analyzed these relationships, so the interplay of relationships, how do they affect each other? So unsurprisingly, your efficiency and your effectiveness metrics affect each other. It's sort of like a puppet, right? As I raise one, the other one goes with it. And the other thing that we did is we said in order to create this algorithm that's really driving the color coding, you need to understand how these things impact business performance. Now, in this particular case, this is not an e-commerce site, right? This is just a CPG site. So we analyze the relationship to business outcomes and sales, because these guys, people are disillusioned with metrics in digital, right? Everyone used to think that it was really exciting because everything is measurable and everything is cool. But people miss the gap about how that relates to what I'm actually trying to do. So in terms of like building brands or driving to a sale, whatever it might be, you can solve that by simply analyzing the relationships to what you're trying to do. And you use that to like weigh your algorithm. So pop quiz number 2. Green means, and red means bad. Right, so humans are terrible, awful at like going through lines of data. We're really not very good at it. We're really good at interpreting things visually, right? So we wanted to make sure that as I think about monitoring performance, I can easily understand like what's good and what's bad, right? I can give that to anyone and they can understand that. So the other thing that we did is we said, look, so here I want to look at Walmart, for example. So I can see it's kind of performing okay, but here's the problem, right? I'm not hitting my targeting and my viewability is way off. Now these things I can fix. I can go in and look at, okay, where's the issue? And I can go back and say, hey, I'm going to dial down the frequency because it's way too high. And actually, I can do 2 things as it comes to my viewability. I can say, you know what, I need a better rate because there's too much waste, which is fine. Just pay for what you get. Or look at the placements where I will get better viewability, like make sure you get better inventory. So it's kind of, it's not just about going, I'm going to get rid of this, I'm going to use this. It's actually, it gives me very clear direction in terms of what I should be focusing on. And making sure that I'm focusing on the things that make sense, right? So this thing down here is also a good sense guide. That tells me how much is underperforming versus the norms, what I expect. And this is how it's performing over time. Again, talking about there is a decay function in this stuff, and you have to kind of work within the confines of how you do that. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what we're focusing on. So it's still early doors, but Sonar, so there's a meeting next week where I'm working with my technology team to really start rolling that out. Obviously, I'll be reaching out to all our clients individually to really see how we can help, what makes sense. And again, going back to the 4 pillars, what makes sense for you as a business, right? Because I really want to make sure that we can support you in whatever way that we can and add value, because it's ultimately about driving performance. So I'd love to see if there's any questions or concerns or want some coffee. Sam?
So are you going to structure your team across those 4 buckets?
Yeah.
So you'll have like an analytics person, you'll
Yeah.
have a visualization person.
Yeah, I really believe that you need specialism, right? So the challenge is if you've got one person trying to work across those 4 things, you're never going to get anything other than the generalist. And I really believe in specialists. Specialists add more value, and you don't need them from as much time because they'll do it much more quickly and efficiently. So that's how as we think about scaling D&I for iProspect, it's really about understanding our collective clients' needs and making sure that you get the right kind of ingredients at the right time to add value. So it's not about, I'm not going to be asking for like 4 FTEs. It might be actually cheaper than 1, but you'll get higher quality interactions during that engagement period. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 9:55.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's over. Thanks, Mark.